Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of October 5th, 2023. As Chair of the committee, I recognize we have the quorum and I call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda, any reports or announcements? Does any member of the committee have anything they'd like to share? Not, we will move to the next item, which is accepting the minutes of our meeting of September 21st, 2023, which was shared on the Google Drive. Has everyone had a chance to look at it, or any comments or corrections? If not, may I get a motion to approve the minutes of September 21st? Second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. We shall now proceed to the town manager's report. Kevin?
I'll have Alex go through a couple updates with you this evening.
So I'm just going to quickly tell you a couple things. We do not have updated local receipts that are different from the last time we met on September 21st, but we'll be able to provide a full update on quarter one at the next meeting. We do have an update on certified free cash. Certified free cash was certified last week for FY24. Free cash is the town's remaining and unrestricted fund balance from operations of the prior fiscal year so this is as of June 30th, 2023, and is mostly comprised of department turnbacks, excess revenue, and unexpended free cash balance from the previous year. So for FY24, free cash for the general fund is certified at $9,090,802. Just for comparison, last year it was approximately $9.2 million. And this amount represents 5.45% of the FY23 budget, which meets the select board's policy of generating certified free cash equivalent to 3 to 5% of the annual budget. Next, retained earnings. They are the unrestricted net assets of the enterprise funds. So for pay as you throw, retained earnings are $399,291. Water enterprise retained earnings are $1,565,946. And the stormwater enterprise retained earnings are $3,112,350. So questions?
Are there any questions from the committee? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. We shall now proceed to the public hearing for our special town meeting on the warrant. May I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
May I get a second?
Second.
We are now in our public hearing. Let us proceed to the first article on the town warrant. Chair, article number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before getting into the details of Article 1, I wanted to take the opportunity, since it's relevant to the first, well, to all the articles, but especially the first few articles, just to review the master balance sheet with you while we're in the public hearing. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to compare side by side where we left the annual town meeting in May, and then the proposed revenue and expenses that are being proposed through the warrant this evening and at town meeting on the 16th. So with regards to revenue, I want to note the most significant change is an increase of $1,223,787 in new growth. That is a substantial number. We're, of course, seeing a lot of new real estate development within the community, both on the residential and commercial side. This incorporates several large projects that were finalized throughout the course of the last year, including the majority of the Edgemere Drive-In redevelopment project and the new commercial development on formerly owned town land known as Centec North. That value of new growth is the highest new growth that we've ever seen and represents nearly $160 million in base real estate value. The next area, which is a minor change, is an increase of just shy of $24,500 in net new revenue for state aid. And then the final adjustment on revenues is an increase of $200,000 for Schedule A receipts. As we talked about with the committee at your last meeting, Schedule A receipts for fiscal year '23 exceeded $15 million. We're making this adjustment really to continue to bolster the funds that we're adding to the general stabilization fund. That's where all these funds for Schedule A receipts are being dedicated. So we look to make additional updates to our fiscal projection model as we move into fiscal year '25 and keep you apprised, of course, once we start that process. So on the next slide, I'll talk about the bottom line changes associated with the adjustments to new expenditures. So there's an increase of $106,000 net change in municipal departmental operations. There's additional $2,840 needs covered in cherry sheet. Offsets and $164,026 in state and county charges. The most significant adjustment comes in the form of addition to the capital improvement plan is $350,000, and then other warrant articles is the largest adjustment of $825,166, which we'll detail out throughout the course of the meeting. So we will now start to go through the details of the warrant, unless there's any other questions on the.
Did have one question, especially for the people watching.
Yep.
What was the municipal increase in charges?
So that's will come up in the warrant,
Okay.
warrant articles.
Well, all of these will come from the warrant articles?
Yes.
Great, yes.
One quick clarification. So, including the capital improvement also?
Yes.
So all.
Yep, those are all found in what we need to request town meetings approval for. Yes.
Chief?
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that capital improvement, that 350,000?
So that's warrant article number
Oh,
3 that we'll talk
You're gonna
about.
put.
Yep.
Okay. Could I ask one additional follow-up on the stormwater revenue? When we originally implemented stormwater, we talked about a reserve each year being put into it. Has that been done, and what is that total right now?
That's essentially what you're seeing right there.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So you are correct, as we're anticipating a significant capital investment to meet the needs of our permit beyond year 5. So, we're in year 5 right now, and we'll begin taking on that endeavor. We've received some preliminary feedback from the EPA as to what our obligations may be.
How are we doing as far as making that commitment?
We've satisfied the commitment of our permit, and we've satisfied the first 4 years, and we'll satisfy year 5, and now begins really the capital improvement planning process, which we're really just in the infancy stages of at this point. Okay. That's all. Yep, so we can go into it.
All right. So Article 1, the article, as stated, is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds in the Treasury a sum of money to amend various departmental appropriations for fiscal year 2024 operating budget or take any other actions in relation thereto. And the motion, as proposed, is to raise and appropriate the sum of $335,210 from taxation and appropriate the same to various departments, specifically as set forth below. And as we can see here, there would be $317,700 for the personnel board, separate appropriations, $250,000. I'm sorry, I misspoke. $106,500 increase to the personnel board, $104,000 increase to the finance committee, and $124,710 to the fire department salaries 1, 2, and 3. And I'll jump now into a little bit more detail into each one of these. This article seeks to make critical adjustments to the operating budget. The $335,210 is roughly an increase of 0.19% of the original budget. The $106,500 to the new salary and wage lines is needed to address employee recruitment and retention and dealing with wage competitiveness, specifically in the Department of Public Works, Library, Planning, Economic Development Department, and the Police Department. The $104,000 is to increase the reserve fund, which will bring the reserve fund to 5% of the fiscal year '24 expense accounts, which is as per the town's policy. The reserve fund, as we're aware, is under the authority of the Finance Committee and is the only tool we have throughout the year to make adjustments to the budget without coming back to town meeting. This higher funding level was the amount that we would have initially probably had at the annual town meeting, but as there was insufficient revenue at the time, we did make some adjustments. Anticipated budget adjustments for the remainder of the year include an increase to town council, legal and operating expenses due to ongoing litigation, and a cable franchise license application, both of which have arisen since the annual town meeting in May. And then the last one, we can break that up into two expenses. This is the $124,710 to the fire department. $18,500 would be required to cover unanticipated costs associated with the settlement of a collective bargaining agreement with the firefighter union. And the remainder, $106,210, would be to cover costs associated with one firefighter position being out off the job, injured while on duty for the remainder of the fiscal year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions related to Article 1 and provide any other detail as needed.
Excuse me, David, for the personal board proposed budget increase, were they related to, I may have misheard, but were they related to detention or some study that our salaries are not? No.
During exit interviews, we've been finding that previous employees had been leaving to find positions with either higher pay, or we were getting close to hiring somebody, and then at the final moment, when they were deciding between the town of Shrewsbury or somewhere else, they opted to go somewhere else, and most often citing higher pay, what we're finding. Does that help answer that?
Yes, it does. No,
Just a follow-up for extension to this. Are we seeing a particular department having a more pressure than the other? Because the personal board is kind of going across a lot of other
Yeah.
functions.
So we have, I can list out some departments and some maybe more specific jobs. The Planning and Economic Development Department, we've had a lot of trouble filling the assistant town planner role. Within the Business Management Division, a division of the Department of Public Works, a number of the different specialist positions we've had vacant and have had applicants throughout most of the summer, and we're trying to fill those. In the library, we've been looking for a reference librarian and a digital service librarian for some time now. And then for the police department, we've been trying to fill public safety dispatchers.
Rajiv.
So one follow-up on that. So for the increase or adjustment of the salaries, which ones are we benchmarking? Which towns or which cities? What's our criteria to set that?
I guess I'd have to get some more information.
So we can share that with you.
Yeah.
We have established set of 10 communities that we utilize in benchmarking. We set our salary ranges based upon the 55th percentile of the average across all of those 10 communities. It's a quantitative-based system that we use. It includes things like population, tax base, things like that, operating budget. We can share that with you. It's the standard set of communities that we use. We have found in some instances, even with these particular positions that we're listing out here, that even if we're appropriately situated based upon our comparable communities, that we're still struggling to recruit and retain. For instance, those two positions within the library that Mr. Snowden mentioned have turned over nearly annually for the last 2 or 3 years. So we're trying to make some adjustments to bolster competitiveness, both for recruitment and retention.
So does the 55 percentile make us less competitive?
It does, yeah, yep. However, we used to use the 50th percentile, and we're trying to build our pay scale to be more competitive across the board, but it's going to take a number of general iterations to get us up closer to the 60th or 65th percentile.
Jim?
David, you kind of touched on this. Do you see most of the dollars going towards maybe open recs, or would you maybe use some of it going after, Kevin mentioned retention or key positions that you don't want to lose looking forward? Is it?
I can start if you don't mind. So open positions, the assistant planner being one of them. We're often in a situation though where we have an existing tenured employee's salary who we would need to adjust as well, just for fairness. You know,
Right.
someone who may have been with us for 2 years, but, you know, the market has passed them by.
Right.
So it's often a sitting employee and a recruitment. The positions that are existing that probably need the most adjustment are public safety dispatchers though. So.
Thank you.
Gene?
In reference to the fire department on the salary, how much over and above this 124 did we spend during the year over budget?
So far this year,
Three,
ending this year's. So we have.
The reserve fund information. So FY '23 reserve fund usage for the fire department was 222,000.
so is it at a point where we should be looking at the procedure we use on putting their budget together on a yearly basis?
So I think we're doing that right now, to be honest, Gene. So if we're able to, so we're accounting specifically for one vacant firefighter position, backfilled at time and a half for the entire year with the majority of these funds, 106,000. So that will be in the base operating budget, you know, with these approvals, and then we would look to maintain that year after year to eliminate that continual shortfall that we've seen.
Is that enough?
It will go a very long way, and maybe we need to make some additional adjustments in FY '25 that we'll look at, but, you know, it's greater than 50% of the adjustment that was needed this year, so it's a huge step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I open to the public. Are there any questions on Article 1 from the public? I don't think there are any, so we can proceed. Mr. Zikri.
Great, thank you. Article 2 is, in addition to the town's general stabilization fund account, so we're proposing to add $596,166 from general taxation into the general stabilization fund, which this committee, of course, knows is the town's rainy day fund, which is used for to overcome significant unforeseen financial challenges should they arise in the future. The stabilization fund's current balance is $4,794,720.10. With this addition, it would rise to $5,390,886.10. That total value represents 3.69% of the municipal and school operating budget for this year. Our policy level is to be at 5%, so we've made great strides over the past few years to make it to this point, and this will just continue to help. Our larger contributions normally come to the stabilization fund at the annual town meeting, and we're being opportunistic to take advantage of the new growth to make this contribution in the fall.
So, on a yearly basis, have we been meeting the 5% goal?
We've never been at policy level, but we've never had this amount in the stabilization account that we have right now.
What percentage have you been at? Has it been like around 2%?
I would say probably on average over the last 10 years, it's been less than 2% on average. Yeah.
Any other questions from the committee? From the public? We can proceed to Article 3.
Article 3, will, to see if the town will vote to borrow, raise, and appropriate or transfer from available funds in the treasury such sums of money as may deem necessary to fund costs associated with amending the fiscal year 2024 general capital budget. In the motion, the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $350,000 from taxation to fund the costs associated with capital improvement projects for fiscal year 2024 as follows. I'll list the prices here first, and then we'll go into a little bit of detail. The first one here listed is for buildings and facilities, school buildings HVAC system, $250,000. The second one being building security for both the school and municipal buildings at $35,000. And the last one being hardware for the IT department at $65,000. And then looking into a little more detail on these, the $350,000, this is an 18.31% increase from the annual town meeting capital budget. The $250,000 for the school HVAC project will add temporary HVAC cooling to the top floor rooms at school buildings that will service the schools for the next 5 to 7 years. There has been, with the changing in the weather, even as early as this year, there was an early release day for the temperatures within the school buildings, and this will help alleviate a lot of those concerns that the schools are having. $35,000 for the building security project for both the school and municipal offices will add enhanced security systems to the offices and the exterior of those buildings. And then lastly, $65,000 for IT hardware, including Wi-Fi endpoints, the library, and computer replacements.
Any questions?
Were these considered, were these on the list for the town meeting and got cut, or these are new asks that were, because of the new growth, we're now able to address?
Some of the school projects are things that we have had in the works for a while and we were unable to fund earlier. And the IT department did, its initial request was reduced before the annual town meeting was completed as well, yes.
Thank you.
Any
For the $250,000 for the HVAC, in here it says next 5 to 7 years. Are we saying that in 5 to 7 years we have to put another $250,000?
Ideally, we would probably have another solution on board that would be more permanent.
So this is
Yeah.
a temporary solution, and we should expect a more permanent solution with more funding requests coming in the next 2 to 4 years.
That would be the intent, correct?
Because my concern would be, if we're just gonna do this for 5 years and do something similar, I would prefer that we would
Yeah.
maybe not do it this year. My wife's a teacher, so she'll be very upset when I said that, but not do that this year, but, sort of puts a plan together to do a permanent solution.
Correct.
So I just don't wanna spend money that we're gonna re-spend. So,
Part of the challenge with the permanent solution is the orders of magnitude that it would take to get there. So this $250,000 investment would allow us to make investments in 100 classrooms. In comparison, the estimate to overhaul the HVAC system just at Floral is in the magnitude of $4.5 to $5 million. So this provides immediate relief even as soon as this June to allow school to continue in session. So I
But that
completely agree with your,
but that kind of tells me that we're not 5 years away from appropriating 15 million, because you're talking about Floral, you have the high school, you have that. So we're gonna have a lot of these $250,000 proposals going in until then, would be my guess.
well, this should address the vast, I mean, maybe Assistant Town Manager Baldinger could talk about how it addresses the majority of the classrooms we have issues in.
Right, so this is focused for 4 schools. Come over here. So Dewsbury High School, Florida Street School, Coolidge School, and Oakville School are 4 buildings that we don't have climate control in, like they're heat only. So there's 106 classrooms that we're working to add these temporary units are. and they're a small temporary unit that goes in each space. They're vented out windows. We have to do some electrical upgrades to use them and some carpentry work to be able to use them also for the windows. But the goal is not to make the rooms necessarily 70 degrees like a full air conditioning space would be. But on those really hot days where some of these classrooms on top floors get 85, 88 degrees, we want to keep these spaces cooler. They're only going to be used about 60 days a year. That's what we're assuming at this point for heat days. We hope to get more than 5 to 7 years out of them. But to your point, we're also looking at, building upgrades in the process.
Follow-up question? Sure. So what percentage of this cost is actually going to be the capital improvements that you put those in? I mean, are we talking $100,000 to build up the building, which would, if you had to replace those things, it's already done, so that wouldn't be a recurring cost? Or are we talking $50,000 in work to build it up so we can install those, and $200,000 for the actual units?
So that breakdown is, it's about $150,000 for the actual units.
Okay.
To cover those rooms, because that includes the 106 units, and then we'll have some spare units also. And then the balance of that is for electrical work and carpentry work, because every window, one window in every window space has to be adjusted so that they can vent outside. And then we're looking at a storage solution for them because they would be removed from classrooms, when not needed. So like they won't be in a classroom for an entire school year. We'll put them in beginning of school year until probably October, and then they will come back out in April and live there till the rest of the end of the season. So they're not used. So they're only used when they're needed.
Okay, that's a different story than $250,000 every 5 to 7 years. It's
Right.
$250 up front, and then, non-inflation adjusted.
So if we had to replace one unit,
Yeah.
we're looking between $1,000 and $1,500 per unit.
Right.
So, the hope is that we'll get much more time, but we want to do the infrastructure work to replace.
Right, that's what it's getting at, so that's a little bit,
Okay.
that's much nicer view, because again, I know it's millions to do those 4 schools or 5 schools, but I also don't want to just be spending $250,000 every 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Gene,
He basically answered, I wanted to know what other alterations would have to be done to the classrooms itself. I didn't know if you needed air intake.
So we would still run our current HVAC systems that supply fresh air to the space. This is just a cooling unit. It is not an air filter. It recirculates. It works similar to what a window unit would be in your home, same idea, but we'll still be supplying fresh air to the building with the standard HVAC, just like we do now.
But the units have to be put in and out. They're not something that
Yeah.
stated.
Yeah, they're a fairly small unit. We don't
Yeah.
want them to really live in the classroom, and then the other part is that they do use energy, so we want to make sure that they're not used, they're only used when.
Yeah.
are they centrally controlled from some?
Excuse me?
Are they centrally controlled for the whole?
No, so
building?
they're individual control of each unit. And there will be a, culture change a little bit with staff, like, public buildings will maintain these and they'll be set at a certain temperature and it can't be adjusted, but they're pretty smart little units actually, so they kind of work on their own.
Any student safety issues given their young
No.
Okay.
No.
And
Is the top floors only enough? Or, should we be considering, the other floors in the building also?
So we're actually planning for all top floors of those schools, second floor of floral and Coolidge. And then like Oak has some spaces in certain wings that get extremely hot. And then we also, like I said, we'll have extra units in case something else arrives, which is, we got
Rajesh,
Thanks for the clarification. So one quick follow-up on that. So those 106 classes, are they critical need classes, or that's a total amount? Is it the critical need volume, or we're getting back maybe next level?
It's total number, so like the entire 3rd floor of the high school, entire 3rd floor of floral. There's no differential, we're not differentiating between one need and another need. It's just a blanket.
Thank you.
blanket.
Yes.
Question,
Yes,
Jim?
please. I guess switching gears, I just had on, David, if you could maybe elaborate on the building security a little bit more. I don't know if you have any details on.
Can't go in specific details, but the general approach is to improve door lock systems and physical barriers in front of multiple schools, without going into too much detail.
And can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
And who drives that? Is that us? Is that the school committee? Is that?
Managed through public facilities.
Yeah, okay.
And then in collaboration with the school department and we have a really good working relationship on both parts, and these capital projects are sort of work together.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. You're looking at it, so it's good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Any other questions? I'll open it up to the public on Article 3. If there's no one, we can proceed to Article 4.
Article 4 is rescinding a borrowing authorization or a portion of the borrowing authorization for the Beal Elementary School that was constructed at 214 Lake Street. Folks know when we seek borrowing authorization for projects where we receive an MSBA grant, the MSBA requires us to appropriate the full amount of funding for the anticipated construction cost of the project. In this instance, the project was originally set at $92 million, and we sought a full borrowing authorization for it. In the end, we have $40,655,000 left in a borrowing authorization that is authorized but unissued. That means we never borrowed those funds, and we won't need to since the project is completed. So we look to rescind this borrowing authorization because borrowing authorizations in the eyes of credit raters look much like a line of credit. And so we're basically closing out this line of credit and showing them that we're never going to borrow this, which looks favorably when we get our next bond rating.
Any questions from the committee? Rajesh?
Maybe I asked this in the last time, but just a quick clarification. So what happens when we rescind this? Is it coming back to a general fund or is it part of the?
So it hasn't been monetized at all.
Okay.
It's just an authorization. So we didn't borrow these funds.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the committee? Nalin?
Just a comment for the people who are watching also. So basically, I know the interest rates are sky high and, we are rescinding this thing, so we can't use this available credit for any other projects because that is what was authorized for, so.
Yes, thank you very much. It can only be used for the Beal project.
One other clarification. We didn't have an interest rate on this 40 million. We could borrow it, but we'd get today's interest rate if we had needed to borrow it.
Absolutely.
So we're not losing anything interest rate wise. We're just making our books look better, cleaner for the bond rating, which will actually save us, points on the next loan.
No more questions from the committee. I'll open it up to the public. Any questions on Article 4? Comments? Since there are none, we can move to Article 5.
Article 5, if I may, I would like to have Principal Assessor Ruth Anderson join us up here and explain the intent behind this article.
Evening. I'm going to go from the beginning.
Please.
So the town is authorized to offer deferrals on real estate taxes for people that qualify. It's in this Mass General Law, so we have to offer them, similar to our exemption programs, blind and veteran and elderly. A deferral is different than an exemption. It means that people can defer their tax, meaning they don't pay all or a portion of it. In order to protect the town from that loss, a lien is placed on the property. There's a recovery and deferral agreement that's recorded at the Registry of Deeds, so that when the property is either sold or the person moves out for whatever reason, the town is able to recoup the taxes and the interest. So the statute says that the interest rate is set at 8% or any lower interest rate that the town so chooses. So this article is to lower that interest rate in Shrewsbury from 8% to 4%.
Gene,
Could I ask how many people are in that program right now?
One,
Just one.
yes.
do we have any inclination in terms of in future, would there be an increase in the number of people using this? This is-
It's really hard to tell. We haven't had anybody inquire about it in the last year, so we allowed the first deferral for fiscal '23, and after that, we didn't have any other interest in it. We publicize as much as we can the tax help programs that are available, but often people don't want to lien on their property or they're not in such dire straits. So it really is a small portion of the population, but the thought is why unduly burden them when they're already in a precarious situation by charging them 8%.
Andrew?
So the difference, do we get it from the, like, I think state has some proposal, recent budget proposal, is there anything related to that? Do we get that difference from state back?
This is not funded by the state at all, so essentially, if somebody defers $6,000 that they couldn't pay from their taxes, the lien would go on the property for that amount plus any accrued interest over time. So when the property is sold and that money's recouped by the town, it's the full $6,000 plus the interest. So we're not losing anything, it's just kind of delayed, so to speak.
Dennis?
Two questions. One is, I think 4% right now is keeping up with inflation, so that's fine, we won't be losing anything. Two is, do you think that by lowering that rate, maybe more people will take advantage of it in the future?
It's possible. The qualifications are pretty strict. Just for instance, so there's two programs that are available. The 41A, the income limit on that is $30,000, which is very minimal. So I'm not sure how many people would actually qualify. The 18A is for people that aren't necessarily elderly, but it's more hardship based, and it's a case-by-case basis that's determined by the Board of Assessors. So we would look at each one of those applications individually and grant as we saw fit.
Any other questions? Please, go ahead.
And this is one household, is this just 1 year's worth, or do they?
They have applied for fiscal '24.
Okay.
So if people can pay part of their bill,
Yeah.
they do so, and then we wait until the end of the fiscal year, and then I partner with the Amy Perkins, our tax collector.
Yeah.
So whatever's left on their bill is the amount that's added to the deferral.
Okay. Do we pay a fee to have it, the lien, is it a one-time at the registry of deeds registering, or do you have to do it every time you change that?
No, so once the lien is on the property, it stays on the property. There is a fee to record that the town pays up front, but then that's added to the balance
Okay.
that's returned back to the town.
Gene?
Quick follow-up, would this particular family fall under our new, where we have a reserve to pay taxes for people that can't afford them?
The Standing in Shrewsbury?
Yeah.
We have given them the application for that as well. So it is possible for people to bundle, so to speak. So the deferral is after any other exemptions are applied to their account. And then they defer whatever balance is left or that they're not able to pay.
And then,
Is there like a higher limit, like how much can be accumulated or, in terms of money or the time?
It's not necessarily with time, but it is for funds, so nobody can defer more than 50% of their property value. So if they're valued at 500,000, they could never defer more than 250,000. And that, again, is to protect the town with the understanding that if we had to mortgage the property, foreclose on the property, then we would make sure that we would get our funds back. Thanks.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I open to the public. Any questions on Article 5? Not, we can close. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Article 6.
Article 6, if I may, Mr. Chairman, have our head of maintenance operations for the fire department, Joe Milos, come up and discuss the acquisition using Community Preservation Act funds, the amount of $70,000 of a 1926 American LaFrance fire engine. Again, this is a Community Preservation Act funded article. This potential asset of the town has been deemed historic by the town's historical commission and been approved and recommended by the Community Preservation Commission for funding and recommended adoption by town meeting. So firefighter Milos will talk about the truck itself and our intentions with it.
The Community Preservation Committee had reached out, actually beginning of last year, talking about bringing some possible parts of the history of the fire department back into the town. They had noticed there was an older engine on the side of the road down on North Quincy, which they had inquired about possibly bringing back into town and restoring it. At the time, I reached out and told them there was a gentleman actually that has this truck here that we're going to talk about. This gentleman was a Shrewsbury resident for a long time, moved out late 70s, early 80s, and he's been living down in Texas since. This gentleman actually found, and we'll go over it a little bit, this truck here, which the town of Shrewsbury Fire Department had two non-motorized pieces of fire apparatus. Those we actually have right now up at the fire station. We have the two hand-drawn units that are up there actually in the lobby at the fire station. Once the town started buying motorized apparatus, this truck kind of comes into effect here. They had bought one truck before this one, and then they were given a truck from one of the members of town, and then this truck is technically the third piece of apparatus the town had ever bought from the fire department. It's a 1926 American LaFrance Type 65 truck, which is just the model of the truck. It was actually delivered to Shrewsbury July 23rd, 1926. It stayed in service actually with the town up until 1956, at which time it was sold off to the American Legion Hall in Needham, where it stayed for several years and then fell into a group of a couple of different private collectors. In 1997, the gentleman that now currently owns the truck found and bought it. Actually, it was up in Colorado when he did find it. At that time, he actually found and did some bunch of research and history on the truck, and he sent us a bunch of pictures, and we also consulted with Mike Perna, the town historian, on a bunch of stuff that they have for the truck. This is the actual original delivery photo from American LaFrance in 1926, right before it left the factory to be delivered to Shrewsbury. It's a little tough to see in the photo, but it actually does say Shrewsbury Engine 3 up on the front of it, and a little bit more prominent on the fuel tank up in the back is the SFD side on the side of the tank. Currently, the gentleman has done a bunch of work to the truck since 1997 when he bought it. At the time it was not running and more pumping. He has since gone through and made it to the point that it actually runs and drives to a fairly reliable standard at this point in time, and made it mechanically sound and safe to drive it down the road. And then he went on a little bit of a scavenger hunt to find all of the equipment that was missing on the truck. So there was extinguishers, there was lanterns, there's a bunch of stuff that was supposed to be on the truck, which he has hence searched down and found most of all period correct equipment that's supposed to be there. He has also accumulated a very large amount of spare parts that are also in the truck, including a complete spare engine that's not in running condition, but it's a complete spare engine, 4 parts for the truck. Just some current pictures of it after he started doing a little bit of work to it. Like I said, he actually went through repaired the fire pump in the truck. That picture to the left is actually the truck pumping water for the first time since probably somewhere in the 50s, because the pump was actually frozen from ice and cracked. He's then done some work to actually start to recoat all of a lot of the chrome parts on the truck, which originally were nickel. Nickel is not as common of a choice at this point in time, so they've been replaced with chrome fittings on fixtures on the truck. He's done some work too to just, like I said, all the small little hose, lanterns, all the stuff you see on the side of the truck. He's tracked all of that stuff down. None of that stuff was with the truck at the time. There is just a little video of the truck that he actually took. That is actually one of the ward's grandchildren, son, I should say, and his granddaughter in the truck. They went down to visit him in Texas. They found him through one of the antique truck clubs, and they actually let him take the truck for a ride when they went down there. What we're looking to do with the money that we're asking for the truck, the gentleman is actually willing to donate the truck back to the town of Shrewsbury. His intention has always been to have the truck back here for the tricentennial celebration in 2027. In talking with him over the past 20 or so years since he first reached out to us when he bought it, he says time has kind of got away from him, and he's now up into his 70s, so he just doesn't have the, doesn't think he'll have the time to pull off finishing what he needs to. So what he asked was he would actually donate the truck to the town if the town agreed to finish the work that he started on the truck and bring it back to what it originally looked like in that picture of 1926. So what we're looking to do with the engine, with the funding on the truck, is to actually finish the rebuild on the engine. It's got a few spots that need a little bit of help. Go through. There is no structural rust on the truck. He's sent several pictures of it, but there is some spots over the years where the side steps have been cracked and poorly repaired or welded. So to go through and fix all of that, to actually take and finish the actual cosmetic restoration, to paint the truck, put the lettering back on the truck, back to what it did in 26 with the Shrewsbury on there. And then there's some other small stuff that I'm sure is going to be needed to be done. He's kind of given us a pretty, about an 8-page letter actually of a full history of what needs to be done and what had been done. So up into, reupholstering the seat, some new tires for the truck, and the actual ladders that are on the truck and all of those pictures are actually borrowed from a gentleman that he knows down there that he does not have them. However, he has all of the parts to put the ladders together, so we'll have to actually reassemble the wooden ladders that was supposed to be on the truck. So that's what we're looking to do with the funding that's on it. The funding is broken down into 2 sections from the Community Preservation Committee. Mr. Mizikar had pointed that out earlier. There's a section for acquisition, which at this point in time is being used for the shipping of the truck to bring it back up here. Because of the extensive amount of spare parts he has, it's going to take an entire 53-foot trailer to get all of the stuff back up here, between the spare engine, the truck itself, and all the rest of the spare parts that he does have for it. So that quote from a couple of different companies for an enclosed trailer to get it up here from Texas up to here comes out to be the $9,500 that's in that first part of the appropriation, leaving the remainder of the funds to go through with the rest of the cosmetic restoration of the truck, along with a few of the rest of the mechanical repairs that need to be done. Anybody has any questions?
I think it's a wonderful endeavor, Mr. Silos. And it's a piece of our town history and will be a great asset for uniting people. I did have a couple of questions related to the restoration. So given the vintage quality of this truck, and there are probably very few people out there who can really do this thing, so could you talk a little bit about what is needed and what sort of experts have to be brought in?
So most of the work that needs to be done on the truck at this point, I said, is cosmetic work. He has gone through and done most of the mechanical repairs to the truck. The engine itself has a small water leak due to the water pump in the front of the truck actually needs to be rebuilt. That's going to actually have to be done by this, over my 40 years of playing around with cars and now being a mechanic for the fire department for 25 years. It's a fairly extensive network of people that we know that do this kind of repairs for all the stuff. There is also a very large SPAMFA is actually what it's shortened out as, but it's the There's a couple of different antique truck specific to fire apparatus actually up in this area. They have a very large meeting every year on Island in July, where there's hundreds of trucks there with all different brands, but there's also specific chapters for American brands. So there's a significant amount of network out there of people that actually do this work and have done this kind of work. We have also reached out, there's a few other towns around us that have done it, as reaching out through CPC. Foxborough just did 2 of their apparatus and brought 2 of those back. Edgartown brought 1 of theirs back. So there's been several other restorations similar to this done. And like I said, at this point in time, most of what this truck needs is cosmetics. It's just, he has not done the cosmetic work to the truck.
Thank you. Dennis, you have a question?
Yeah, what's gonna be the run rate once we get the truck to where it should be? Obviously, we wanna keep it for, another 100 years, so it's gonna get 400. What do we anticipate spending per year to?
Depending on what we do with the truck, gentleman, Mr. Treadway, had asked that the truck be available for the public to see. So
Yeah.
basically, Spirit of Shrewsbury celebration, obviously the tricentennial, other general open houses and stuff like that. So it's not a truck that's gonna be out on the road like all the rest of our trucks are every day. It'll have a few appearances each year where the truck does come out. So it should, barring anything catastrophic happening to the truck, not be a large annual reoccurrence for fees on what you're gonna have to do to keep it up and running. The challenge of life is in 20 years, if they're still gonna have gas, that you're gonna be able to run it on. So, that we're gonna have to see what happens in the future.
Gene?
Joe, I think it's a great idea, it's a great project, but I don't think $70,000 is gonna cover this, really. I guess what I'm asking, have we thought about an alternative for raising money if we have to?
We did talk to the CPC on possibility of if that money did not cover what we needed to get done on the truck. They were open to possibly revisiting it if we get to a point, once the truck, as I explained to them, I said, I've got a ton of pictures and a ton of videos, but that doesn't actually tell you what it is until you have the truck here. So with talking to them, they were possibly open to, if we needed to possibly do a slight increase on it at some point, or another actual attachment to it, we could. Also, we have reached out to a few different people. It gets a little touchy about, with the Community Preservation Committee funding, you can't fundraise for the truck while you have funding from the CPC. You have to spend the money from the CPC first. At that point, you can go out and start fundraising afterwards. If we were to fundraise in the middle, we actually have to spend all of the fundraising dollars before you spend any of the CPC dollars. So it became a little bit of a touchy area there. Also to the point that a good amount of people that we've talked to have been willing to just donate some time and help out on the project also. And talking with a few of the other towns that have done it, yes, it is definitely probably a little on the lower side if we were gonna actually send it out to have a company do everything, but we're gonna try to do a good amount of the disassembly and reassembly in-house, and saving on a lot of the labor that's going on.
Well, the only reason I bring it up, sometimes volunteers are not the best on a project of this size.
Granted.
And there's a limited number of people, for instance, you said a water leak. If we've got to send that block out, somebody's got to sew that block up, put that thing back together. It's not the local machine shop that does something like that. You may have to ship that to Ohio, to the West Coast, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I just think the 70,000 total is going to be not very quickly. And I think, as far as the CPA goes, you're probably going to commit, as soon as you get it and evaluate it, you're going to commit the funds. So you could start a fundraising very quickly after that if you had to, and I think a lot of people, would contribute to it. But I think it's a great project, but again, I think it's a very low ball. And you know that from restoring some of the vehicles you've been involved with. Something that used to cost $1,000 today is $5,000 or $6,000. That's all I have.
Gene? 1 minute.
I echo Gene's comments as well. Just a couple of questions. Do we know average cost spent by these towns, that you mentioned about?
There's a fairly wide spread between them, honestly. Some have spent as little as $40,000 on restoring what they had for apparatus, and some have spent almost $160,000 restoring it. Also, the ones that were on the lower side did have some skilled people that helped them out, like we're talking about. Some of the ones that were on the higher side were just, here it is, give it back to us when it's all done, and that's the ones that were on the higher side of the world. Again, it varied pretty significantly depending on which ones you looked at.
The second question is, I know in your presentation, currently it's registered title in Texas, so if we are bringing it over here, we need to register it here. Are there any state guidelines that we need to be aware of?
No, because it is titled in Texas, it'd just be a regular motor vehicle transfer like you would normally do for any kind of sale.
Rajiv?
Thanks for that presentation. So, two things. One is, does this fall under like historic designation, which comes with more specifications on who can touch it and who cannot touch it, like when fixing it and all those things? Does it comes with any of those?
It does, and we actually had a couple of different meetings with the CPC over that, and the assistant town planner actually had worked with us, Chris, I'm sorry. And we actually, there's a bullet point list of about 10 items. And the biggest thing is, which falls under, once it becomes a historic asset to the town, is you can't paint it blue. It's got to be back to what it looked like in that picture in 1926. And that's really what it falls down to. And even in that, there is some stuff that'll actually say that if a part cannot be replicated to be exact, then it's allowed to be changed to something that's more current, that's allowed to keep the vehicle functioning. So there is a list of about 10 items that we need to make sure that we do follow to stay within the guidelines of what the historic restoration on the truck would be. But it's all pretty straightforward stuff. It's not anything that's super specific that it has to be certified by a certain person or by a certain work that needs to be done to it.
Right. My second question, so with the transportation, you mentioned like 9,500, and then work and restoration and everything. So it has to have a permanent staging place somewhere where people can go in and visit and everything. So do we have to build anything new for
So right now, what we'll do with the truck is we have space down in the basement of the Station 2, which is down on Route 9. There is space underneath the station where they used to house the ambulance, which the ambulance has now been brought upstairs because it's too large to fit in the space down. That space underneath is big enough to fit what this truck will be. That won't allow the public to view it when it's in storage, but we will make sure that there is more than ample times that the truck is out for public events so that the truck is viewable for the public. And if, there's just this couple of weeks, there's a coming open house at the fire station, so we'll be up for that. So that's the kind of stuff that we envision the truck being used for.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I open it up to the public. Any questions or comments on Article 6? No?
There's one.
How long is it gonna take once you get the truck?
You have to identify yourself.
My name's Carissa Rodriguez.
Okay.
How long is it gonna take when you get the truck?
To get the truck here or to finish the...
The whole thing, the whole problem.
To get the truck here, we would be hoping in the next couple of months. The whole project is going to take a couple of years to get the truck finished. It's definitely not something that's going to happen in a month or two. It's going to take the full amount of time that the funding is allowed to be spent on the truck to actually get it done to where it needs to be.
No question? Any other questions from the public? No, thank you so much. We can now proceed to Article number 7. Mr. Mizutani.
Great. Article 7 proposes to make adjustments to Article 14 of the dog control bylaw, which is part of our general bylaws. There are two changes that are shown in the motion in kind of red line format, where the first is adjusting the fees. So we're adjusting the fees for fines for violation of any aspect of the bylaw, which is laid out in Section 6. The state's general law requires that the towns, any individual town penalties not be less than what is dictated through the general laws. So we're making those adjustments as follows. increasing the first offense from 25 to 50, the second from 50 to 100, the third from 100 to 300, and then the fourth in successive offenses to $500 to be in compliance with the general laws. The second aspect of this would be adjusting language associated with our bylaws that is inconsistent with the general bylaws under Chapter 140, which changes specifying the hearing authority to generalizing the hearing authority, moving it from select board to simply stating the town's hearing authority. So those are the two changes that we're seeking to make here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Please, Dennis.
So, did the state just change the bylaws, or how long have we been out of compliance?
I don't know the answer to that. My recollection, the last time this was changed was quite a few years ago. I want to say 2014, but I can look that up as we proceed through here.
Okay, I was wondering if we had been out of compliance, why now versus just staying out of compliance?
It's kind of the diligence of our existing animal control officer as he's going through all his certifications. You know, that changed about 2 years ago, and just kind of a fresh look at everything.
Okay.
But, yep.
Any other questions from the committee on Article 7? Please.
What is the hearing authority versus the select board? Is it going to be is it the town, is it the dog officer and a few other?
So the general laws establish certain entities who may be a hearing authority. One of them is the select board. One of them is the chief of police. And there may be a couple other options. Again, we're just looking to generalize our bylaws to be in direct correlation. But there is it can't just be anyone. There's
Right.
specific.
I mean, currently I think it is a select one, correct?
Currently, it's the chief of police.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that means we were in violation, right? Our law said it was the select board rather than, we're striking it out.
Correct. The general laws allow for the broader designation of the hearing authority.
Just one quick, the police chief is not actually going to do it. He's going to assign somebody from within his department, I would hope.
To be determined, we haven't had one pop up yet, but officially, the chief or his designee is how it reads. So, yeah.
Any other questions on Article 7? Yes, Sam.
So we're moving these fines up so that they meet the minimum required. Was there any consideration to being more than that, or do other towns have larger fines in these cases?
Not that I'm aware of for the second part of the question. We felt that this change was certainly sufficient. This is not an area that honestly we've implemented or needed to use within the last 6 or 8 years, so it's not really a financial consideration for us.
Jim?
Kevin, just to follow up on that, so are you saying, like, for the most part, we don't really have a lot of dog hearings that come across your desk, for the most part?
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
unusual.
vast majority, that's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Article 7? If not, I will open it up to the public. Any questions on Article 7, any comments from the public? If not, we can proceed to Article 8.
So, without objection, I would be able to generalize Article 8 and Article 9, the last two together, as they're very similar. Happy to answer any individualized questions, but both of these articles seek to allow the town clerk to make non-substantive changes to things like numbering order, et cetera, to the bylaws when we make adjustments through town meeting. The reason there's two articles is we're seeking approval through Article 8 for the general bylaw and Article 9 through the personnel bylaws. One specific example that I can supply on how this would be applied. In 2019 and 2020, we made some adjustments to the personnel bylaw, and that included removing some entire sections, but there are references to those prior sections that weren't picked up on in other sections of the bylaw. Article 18 used to be vacation leave, and now it's holiday or something like that. So we were just seeking that administrative, non-substantive approval to be able to be handled by the town clerk prior to republishing the bylaws. So we made a similar change 2 years ago
The May 2022 annual town meeting zoning bylaw.
for zoning.
Prior to this, we had to go back to town meeting.
Back to town meeting for any change.
Any change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the other one. I was,
Yeah.
maybe I would say, didn't we just do this like 2 years ago? I was actually thinking that, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
We did, just in a different
Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
We just expand this to cover all departments.
This will
This will
take
cover all the
care of
bylaws.
That's it, takes it all, okay.
Any questions or comments on Article 8 and 9?
I'm assuming there's some sort of review by someone to confirm that this is a non-substantive change before it's actually made.
Right. It would have to be handled through town council as well, and it will be documented at the bottom of the subsection as a requirement, so it'll be noted that within the document, any changes that are made by the clerk.
And will town meeting get a copy of that?
Yeah, every time we republish, it's posted to the website. They're live on the website.
And it is sort of a change log, that would be sort of.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions on 8 and 9? Not, I open it up to the public. Any questions or comments from the public on Article 8 or 9? Seeing none, we can, I believe we're finished. If there's no other questions or comments on any of the articles, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against, please say nay. The motion passes, and we are now done with our public hearing. We shall now proceed, committee members, to deliberating on the articles that we have just received excellent information on. So we will go one article at a time. We will start with Article 1.
One question.
Yes.
So they did not put the TIF onto this?
That's correct. Yeah, so unfortunately, Physique Instrumente was not able to come to a lease agreement with the property owner,
Okay.
and therefore we don't have the opportunity to entertain such an offer from them. Or such an agreement with them, I should say.
So is that done, or are they still looking to do the lease?
We're working with them still for that property and other properties within the community.
Okay, so it isn't over, it's just that one.
That one particular property, within this time frame to get it on this warrant.
Okay, no, that's fine, I just, we talked about putting that on, so, okay, great.
Any other questions?
Maybe I'll just follow up on that. So let's say, what would be the scenario? So we'll be waiting for next general town meeting?
More than likely. So there's a quarterly meeting of the State Economic Advisory Committee that needs to approve it. And, their next application deadline is in January. And that would allow for the March meeting. And then the next one would put us in the window of the annual town meeting. So I don't, depending on all the parameters and things involved, I don't believe we'd call a special town meeting for it, but if necessary, we would. But I would think it will wait till May.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. Not, let us go back to our deliberations. Article 1, the raising of $335,000 and $210 from taxation and the appropriation to the various departments listed in Article 1. Are there any comments anyone wishes to make? Any discussions we wish to have? If not, may I get a motion to accept Article 1? Recommend Article 1.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. We shall now proceed to Article 2, the raising and appropriation of the sum of $596,166 from taxation into our general stabilization account.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Article number 3, the appropriation of a sum of $350,000 for the various capital improvement projects, fiscal year 2024. We get a motion to, any discussions or deliberations? If not, may I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. We shall now move to Article 4, which was to rescind the borrowing, the rescission of the excess amount of the Beal School borrowing amount. So, any deliberations or questions or comments on Article 4?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. And we shall now move to Article 5.
It's on the same page. That's on the same page, right? The Article 5 title is missing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Mr. Chairman, on the other side, this is the article associated with
Yes.
tax deferral interest.
Yes, I see it now. Sorry. Any deliberations or questions on Article 5?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. We shall move to Article 6. This is for the beautiful fire engine. Do we have any questions or deliberations on Article 6?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Article 7, the one on the dog control law. Any questions, comments, or deliberations? If the committee would like to have.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion, all against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Article 8, 8 and 9, we'll do 8 separately. First one is Article 8. Are there any questions or deliberations on Article 8? Any, may I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Secondly,
Second.
all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. And the last article, Article 9, any deliberations or any comments, questions on the final article?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. And that completes our deliberation for the special town meeting warrant. We shall now proceed to our review of our meeting schedule. On October 16, 2023, our special town meeting will be held at the Oak Middle School Auditorium. All committee members are requested to reach there by 6:45, just in case we have anything to deliberate on or act on. Any questions or comments on that? If not, we shall, the next meeting after that is November 16, followed by December 21st, and then we go to the new year, January 18th. Any other questions, comments on the schedule? If not, the correspondence received during this brief period, an email to the Finance Committee from Kevin Vizikar, Town Manager, regarding additional information about Physic Instrumente dated September 25th, 2023. And a second was an email to the Finance Committee from Anna King, State Representative, regarding the 1.082 billion tax relief package. It was passed in the House dated September 29, 2023. Any comments on the correspondence? If not, may I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
May I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.